Hello everyone, this is Anthony, the Debt Alchemist. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm going to go over bankruptcy, the dreaded word, the hated the hated initials of BK, right? So let's go take a few minutes of this, probably no more than 5 or 10 minutes max. If you need to replay this and watch it over and take some notes, go for it. Do that. That way you're well informed and educated on how bankruptcy works, what it is and what it takes, and what type of bankruptcies are there, right? So there's even different kinds of bankruptcies. So let's go ahead and get together and go over this. Bankruptcy. What is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is when a consumer, when you can't no longer either had a job loss, either there was medical issues, there was a divorce, there was something catastrophe that happened to you in your world that caused you not to be able to continue making your payments to your creditors, right? Bankruptcy was designed for that. Bankruptcy was designed to give you what's called a restart button, right? A restart option. That is to get you, eliminate all your debts and get you back in the financial system again, so that way you can contribute to our society, quote unquote, and actually obtain loans and be a productive member of society, right? Because if you're financially trapped and you have no way out, no institution, financial institution or the credit card institutions will, they won't be making any more money on you because you're out of the system, quote unquote. You're off the grid. So bankruptcy allows you to jump back on the grid to where the creditors can now start charging you for interest and lending you money and charging you for lending you money, right? So, but nonetheless, let's take a look at both point of views. What happens when, what takes place for you to file bankruptcy, and how do the creditors and the financial institutions view you when you do file bankruptcy? So first of all, there's two different types of bankruptcies. There's a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and there's a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Those are different type of bankruptcies. Chapter 11 doesn't apply to you. That's normally for businesses, not individuals, right? So let's leave Chapter 11 out of the scenario for now and only look at the two options that are available for consumers, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. What are those and how do you qualify for those, and what are some of the pros and cons of each one, right? So let's take Chapter 13 right off the bat. Chapter 13 is basically a restructuring of the debt bankruptcy, right? Where they normally waive all future interest, pretty much. Sometimes very little interest on there they leave on it, but majority of there's no more interest accumulating on your accounts. They give you a set monthly payment to pay back the balances, and doesn't really give you that much payment relief, quite honestly, right? You're still making the same payment, but now instead of going towards interest, it's going towards principal. Chapter 13 does still allow the creditors to charge some interest on these accounts, so you're still paying very little interest, but not as much as it was before, right? So Chapter 13, you still have to pay the full balance on your creditors, plus interest, and you make a one monthly payment, right? Instead of multiple towards different accounts, only one. It will impact your credit for the next 5 to 7 years as well, too. In some cases, even longer, depending on how much debt you have and how many years it takes to get you out of debt, right? So that's Chapter 13. Let's put that aside and shelve it, and let's look at the other chapter. Let's look at the other bankruptcy option, which is Chapter 7. So Chapter 7 basically says you're in such deep trouble financially that you cannot afford to make any payments anymore to your creditors, no matter what payment option is available for you, right? So then you file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which basically wipes out the creditors in terms of paying them anything back. It becomes zero, and you move on with your life. Now, what are the pros and cons of that for you, right? Chapter 7, the creditors got together and lobbied with the politicians, and they passed it through the Congress and Senate, and ultimately became a law, where now you have to take what's called a means test to qualify for Chapter 7, which basically means that you have to have completely no assets, no reserves. You basically you can't have you're making very little income, right, or no income at all, in order to qualify for Chapter 7. Because they're not going to allow you just to wipe out your creditors without actually proving to them that you're in such deep financial troubles that you cannot even sustain to make any payments to your creditors, and therefore you need to file Chapter 7 to wipe away all your debts away for once and for all, right? So that's Chapter 7, and it used to be easier to file Chapter 7, quite honestly. But then again, the creditors and the financial institutions got together and said, wait a minute, we have a lot of people filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy and wiping their debts and then getting back into the system where they get loans and they get credit cards down the line again, and then they file again Chapter 7 and they keep repeating that process, right? So the creditor said, no more, we're not going to do this. We're going to lobby through the Congress and the Senate and the politicians and vice versa and pass laws to try to protect themselves from consumers that take advantage of Chapter 7 bankruptcy over and over and over and over. Right? So now they put it what's called a means test. Again, it looks at your income, it looks at your expenses, it looks at what happened financially to you that made you collapse this way. It also doesn't allow you to, once you file bankruptcy, it doesn't allow you to make a large amount of money within that 6 months after filing bankruptcy, because then that means you're hiding assets or you're just kind of like playing dead so you can qualify for Chapter 7, right? And I don't mean playing dead as in literally playing dead, but basically meaning that you're pretending that you're really in bad shape financially, just so that way you can qualify for Chapter 7 so they can forgive your debt, but in reality, you're not so bad. You're just hiding your assets, right? So that's why they kind of put a 6-month clause even after filing bankruptcy in, once it's discharged, that you can't really show that you have a lot of income, that all of a sudden you made a lot of income and all of a sudden you have assets and vice versa, because they look back and say, well, wait a minute, we thought you were in such deep financial troubles that you qualify for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and all of a sudden within 3 months after filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy and being discharged, now you got great income, you got plenty of assets and vice versa. So they're going to look at that and take a look at that and go, oh, wait a minute, you committed, I think, bankruptcy fraud. Nobody wants to commit bankruptcy fraud. I'm going to tell you that right now. Do not commit bankruptcy fraud, because if you commit bankruptcy fraud, holy moly, you're gone, right? They will arrest you and they will imprison you for that. Do not file bankruptcy fraud. Do not play around with this scenario. It's not in your benefit. If you truly have to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy and you're in deep financial troubles, then go for that. Not a problem. If you're not such deep financial troubles, but you can't, you really can't get out of debt, and there's some other issues happening and you need to file Chapter 13 bankruptcy, then file Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The balance is not forgiven. You still pay a little bit of interest, and it takes 5 to 7 years to file to complete the Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and it'll stay on your credit report for I think 7 to 10 years as well too, right? So when it comes to bankruptcy, don't play around with it. You will get arrested. Make sure you file the right appropriate ones, Chapter 13 or Chapter 7. Again, Chapter 7 is for dire situations. Chapter 13 is for situation that you just need financial help to kind of get under control things, right? So hopefully that helps you guys on what it is in terms of the pros and cons. Now let me go over a couple of things of positive things about bankruptcy. Everybody thinks that if they file bankruptcy that they're never going to get credit again, that they can't buy a house, that they can't get a car loan, that they can't get a credit cards anymore, and that they're out of the system completely. Not so, honestly. That's not the case at all. Because when you file, Chapter 7, the creditors and the financial institutions want you back in the system. When you file Chapter 7, that means you don't have any more liabilities. And if you don't have any more liabilities, that means you have more cash in hand, right, somewhere. So then the creditor wants to give you credit so you can start paying interest. Because guess what? The credit card companies and the financial institutions make their money on lending money. So imagine if everybody in America, 360 million of us, filed bankruptcy, and we can't get any more credit for anything, right? We can't get a house, we can't get a car, we can't get a credit card. What do you think will happen to the creditors? They will stop being in business. There'd be no more credit card companies. There'd be no more financial institutions, no more banks, nothing to lend anyone on any money. So just because you file bankruptcy doesn't mean you can't buy a car. As a matter of fact, you can buy a car the next day after filing bankruptcy. You can buy a house 2 years later under the FHA guidelines, right, after filing bankruptcy. And you actually get credit cards as well, too, in terms of that. When when bankruptcy is discharged, because again, you have money now to spend because you have no more liabilities, and they want you back in the system. Now granted, they're not going to give you a $15,000 balance, available credit actually on your credit, just because right after bankruptcy. No, they'll give you that $1,300 or $2,000 credit limits, work your way back up to show that you're responsible again financially, so that way you don't get yourself in a hole again, right? So there are some pros and cons about bankruptcy. Listen, if something drastically happened in your life, like a medical issues, loss of employment issues, anything financially that's drastic and dramatic, look at bankruptcy. It's not that bad, okay? There are people that filed bankruptcy and actually came up 2 years later and have a 700 FICO plus, 800 FICO in some cases. So it's not a bad thing. You can still buy a house. You can still get a car. You'll still get credit from the creditors and all that. Okay, so don't let someone tell you just because you filed bankruptcy that you'll no longer be able to get any more loans, you can't buy a car, you can't buy a house. All that is nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about. You can. Now, I'm not being an advocate towards a bankruptcy. All I'm saying is, look, every option is available to the table when there's a financial crisis going on in your home. Look at all the options. Know what they are, know how they work, and make the best decision for you and your family. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, right? It's all about that. If you don't make the right decision, then it could hurt you. But the only way to make that right decision is knowing the facts on what each option is available for you. So don't think of every option as a negative thing, or you heard from a friend or a family member or this or that. Forget about it, okay? They don't understand it just as much as you don't understand it. Believe that. Unless you're in this industry financially and know how each option works, you don't know, right? That's just common sense. But people think they know. They just don't really know. They've heard bits and pieces of things, but they don't know the facts of things, right? So again, I'm not being an advocate towards bankruptcy. Please understand that. Bankruptcy should only be used as a last resort, right? Truly a last resort. But if you're at that point in your life financially, then file for bankruptcy. I promise you'll bounce back pretty quickly. It's actually not that bad. I know plenty of people close to me that filed bankruptcy. It isn't that bad, and I see these guys come right back up like it never happened, right? Because it gives you that restart button. So hopefully this kind of helps you understand what bankruptcy is all about, what it is, and how you can use it to your advantage in some cases. Again, it's only in dire situations as a last resort. If all else fails or there are no other options financially available to you and bankruptcy is it, go for it. File bankruptcy. Look for a local attorney in your area and file bankruptcy. Okay? So hopefully this helps you guys out dramatically. Again, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that you share this, like it, whatever social media platform you're seeing this, whatever type of web page or anything of this nature that you're seeing this, subscribe to it, like it, follow me, and I'll give you guys as much more information in depth about these things, where I will interview bankruptcy attorneys, I will interview creditors, and do all these things and get the true knowledge to you in front of you from what they say, the horse's mouth, right? So again, thank you for tuning in. This is Anthony, the Alchemist. I hope all this information has been very helpful to you guys. Thank you, everybody. Take care.